Drawdown can be a great retirement option as it gives you complete control over how you can take an income and fund your retirement. However, this flexibility can come at a cost, and we're going to share 3 of the biggest mistakes that I personally see with Drawdown that can mean your retirement is less Barbados and more Benidorm. Mistake number 1, taking too much income too early. With people living longer and longer, the reality is that if you retire in your 60s, according to the Office for National Statistics, there's a 1 in 4 chance that you'll live into your 90s, which means your drawdown pension may have to support your retirement for 30 years or more, which can put a strain on your pension pot. Yeah, you may have your state pension, but the reality is that if you want a decent lifestyle in retirement, or you want to retire early, you may not be able to completely rely on the state pension in its entirety. Drawdown allows you to take as much or as little income as you like, and the flexibility, it is great, as I say. It's possible to take more income during the earlier years of your retirement and then reduce it as you get older and you're no longer able to do the things that you used to do, or if you have other form of income that will kick in at a later date, such as the state pension and defined benefit pensions. With this flexibility, you can even take your tax-free cash and no income if you're still working or you don't need an income. One of the biggest mistakes, though, that I see is the temptation to take a significant amount of income from the pension. When Flexi Access Drawdown was introduced in the pension freedoms in 2015, this was referred to as the Lamborghini effect. Essentially, those who reach 55 or above would go and blow their pensions on big ticket items. One way to try and mitigate this risk is to use and know something called your withdrawal rate, which is simply the amount of income that you take from your pension divided by the value of it. So what is a good withdrawal rate, you may be asking? You may even have heard of this been called a sustainable withdrawal rate. Well, it's going to depend on many things, such as the age at which you retire, your risk tolerance and other retirement income that you've got, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. Some would argue that a withdrawal rate anywhere from 3 to 5% a year is okay, or you may even heard of this known as the 4% rule. Now, that's all well and good, Alex, but get to the risks of drawdown. What highlights the risk of this retirement option is that in a study by the Financial Conduct Authority that I've mentioned in other videos, they found the average person in drawdown was taking 8% of their pension pot a year, which is more than double what is thought to be that sustainable rate. In reality, if these levels are correct, retirees could get through their pensions quite quickly and face an uncertain future in their later years. Mistake number 2 that I see is investing too cautiously or panicking during stock market crashes. One of the cardinal sins I'll often see is that when an inevitable stock market crash occurs, investors have seen their portfolios cut by 20, 30, 40% or more. They panic. Unable to bear the pain of any further losses, they sell their investments to cash. The stock market eventually recovers and they crystallize what were effectively paper losses up until the point they sold. Time for a war story of a situation I'd experienced firsthand as an independent financial advisor. Cast your mind back to March 2020 and COVID-19. The stock market was in a precipitous fall and was down 30%. The news was full of sensational headlines such as 100 deaths from COVID today. A client who was fortunate, not one of mine, was a retired doctor, and believing it was the end of the world and the healthcare system and the stock market had further to fall, he sold his entire portfolio valued at roughly 500k, I think it was, with the intention to buy back in at cheaper prices, believing the world was on the brink. Lo and behold, the stock market recovered in rapid time, and if we assume his investments were down a modest 15%, it could have been more, I can't remember exactly when he sold out, that would have been a 75k loss. Added to this, he bought back in after the rapid recovery at higher prices. The reality is, his losses were probably closer to 100k or more. Now, these numbers aren't going to be completely accurate. I can't remember the exact details, but they are directionally right. Trying to time the market or selling to cash in the hope of buying back in at lower prices has been historically at least, a terrible strategy in the past, as the US stock market since World War II has lost 20% or more 13 times. And despite this, the compounded annual growth rate has been almost 10% a year. Since 1972, a £10,000 investment in the US stock market, we're not going to account for currency fluctuations, would have grown to 1.6 million despite catastrophic events such as the banking crisis of 2008, numerous wars, and the global pandemic. If you are using drawdown as a way of funding your retirement, then your pension pot may have to provide an income for well over 30 years or more, as we've said. The remaining pension fund that is not taken as an income is usually invested to potentially benefit from any future, hopefully at least, investment growth. This can help offset the withdrawals, which helps to support the longevity of the pension fund. For example, if you withdraw 4% of your pension a year and the remaining amount grows by 4% a year, then in theory at least, the growth should offset the withdrawals and it shouldn't go down. Now, it's not absolutely correct, this, as it depends on the timing of withdrawals, and the growth's probably on a lower amount, but you get the picture. One mistake that I see is that investors aren't prepared to accept any or very limited investment risk, and so the returns aren't there to support the longevity of the pension fund once it's in drawdown. This could be if they're unwilling to invest in anything other than cash and stick it under the mattress approach, or they've got too much exposure to defensive asset classes such as fixed income. The stock market can seem particularly scary if you've been burnt in the past, similar to the story I explained earlier, which is why I'd always recommend having a plan, an investment plan, and having a written agreement, at least with yourself, of your asset allocation and investment strategy, and knowing what the potential volatility of your portfolio could at least be. We've all heard the famous line, regurgitated, past performance is no guide to the future. And this is true. Who knows what could happen in the future? But it can give you an idea of how bad things have been in the past. So, for example, if you're invested in a 60-40 portfolio, without getting into the merits of that as an investment strategy, in a truly awful year, this portfolio could get cut by as much as a third, as it did in 2008, 2009 during the banking crisis. It would be reasonable to assume it could be as bad as this again, if not worse. So if losing a third of your retirement pot seems intolerable and unthinkable, perhaps your risk tolerance doesn't fit that investment strategy. Mistake number 3 that I see is not using drawdown to take as tax efficient as income as possible. With drawdown, you can take the income to suit your circumstances. So this could be taking your tax-free cash as a monthly income, or taking a combination of your tax-free cash and crystallized taxable pension funds to make use of your personal allowances. With drawdown, it's possible to stipulate exactly how much tax-free cash and taxable income you want to take to maximize the tax efficiency and utilize your personal allowances. Your personal allowance is the first £12,570 of your taxable income, which is taxed at 0%. With this option, you can take taxable income from your pension up to your personal allowance and then take the remainder perhaps from your tax-free cash if you need more income. I've used this example before in another video, but let's go over it again. So Terence retired at age 63 and his private pension is roughly 200k. His expenses come to 24k a year and he needs this amount from his pension. Without getting into the merits of this is too high a withdrawal or not, he's got no other income as he's not reached his state pension age. Therefore, he's got all of his personal allowance remaining, which, if you remember, is the first £12,570 of his taxable income that's taxed at 0%. So using a tax-efficient income withdrawdown, Terence can withdraw £12,570 from his crystallised funds or taxable side of his pension. Although the class is taxable income, it's within the personal allowance, and so the effective tax rate would be 0%. At the same time, he can take the £11,430 that he needs from his tax-free cash to make up the remaining amount. By doing this, the effective tax rate will be a whopping 0%. If Terence had simply taken this from his tax-free cash without regard for his personal allowance and taxable funds, he'd have wasted the personal allowance, which he didn't need to use. And this opportunity cost could be as much as £2,500 if we assume the personal allowance amount that he didn't take was then taxed at 20%. Drawdown can be a great option for you and it gives you loads of flexibility, but it is important to be aware of the risks. If you are considering drawdown, then watch this video which looks in more detail at how you can take a tax-efficient income from your drawdown pension and maybe even pay no tax.